start talking about tuples. What's a tuple? A tuple is a lot like a list. It's a data structure that holds items. They can be like items. They can be different types of items. It doesn't matter what you put in it. The big difference between a list and a tuple is once you create a tuple, you can't change it. It's what we call immutable. You can't mutate it in any way. Once you put 5 numbers into a tuple, those are the 5 numbers for that tuple. Now, there's one caveat to that. Tuples can hold lists, and you can put 3 lists into a tuple. And you can't change which 3 lists are in the tuple, but you can access the list and change the list itself. So, that's a little more complexity than we will do in this class, but it is possible to change a list that is stored in a tuple, but you can't change what list is in your tuple. Commonly used tuples for things like geographic coordinates, longitude, latitudes, because you generally don't want your users changing longitude and latitude things. RGB colors, when you're setting color values for web pages and stuff, you don't usually want those to be editable. You want them to be the colors that have been approved. So you'll see the red, green, and blue number stored in a tuple. Anytime you need to do things like return multiple values from a function, would not have known this because we didn't really talk about it. But in Python, when you return multiple items, which we did from some functions recently, it actually returns it as a tuple in the background. So Python made it a tuple, and when it gets over to where you're using it at, you get it out of the tuple, put it into individual variables. Why does my computer hate me today? So here are some examples of defining a tuple and how you can mix data and things in them. So tuples are indicated, okay, lists have square brackets. Tuples are going to have parentheses around them. So tuples have the curves. Lists have squares. They are same as a list. Items inside are separated via commas. You can mix data types, so you can have a number, a string, a Boolean, a list, and the thing with the curly braces is actually a dictionary. So you can have different things inside of the tuple. If you only want one item in your tuple, no idea why you would use a tuple if you're only storing one item, but you can. If you only want one item in your tuple, you have to put the item and a comma. Otherwise, it doesn't recognize it as being a tuple. I don't know why you would use this. That would have to be some really rare special case where you needed some immutable value, but there's other ways to do immutable values other than tuples. Tuples can be created without the parentheses, use the commas, but the parentheses absolutely improve clarity. I'm going to strongly suggest that you always use the parentheses. When we did the return statements, we didn't, but as far as coding style-wise, it's better with the parentheses because then you know you've created a tuple, or somebody reading your code has a strong indication that you intended to create a tuple. Hey, that one's right. So, oddly enough, you can access tuples in very much the same way you can list elements. So they have an index number. Each item has an index number. You use the square brackets around it to get that particular index. You can do the negative indexing like we talked about with lists. I discourage it because I find it very confusing for especially new programmers. You can slice it like we sliced of strings using the colon between the starting index and the ending index of where you want to slice it at. Now remember slicing strings? Vaguely? Okay. You can unpack a tuple, which basically means you want to get the individual pieces out and do something with it. So if I have a tuple that has a person's information in it, this one has my information in it. No, I'm not 35. I just wish I was. So this one has name, age, my job title, and the city that I'm currently in. Copilot wrote this code for me. So. Then I can unpack it by putting variables in the order I want them filled in, separate by commas, and put the equal sign in the name of the tuple. So if I have the name of the tuple over here, it's going to take these in order and put them into whatever the variables are. So the first one goes into the first variable, the second goes in the second variable, third one goes in the third variable, so on and so forth. So if you mess up and you put the variable names in the wrong order, it's still going to fill them in the order it comes to them in the tuple, because the computer's not smart enough to know that you mixed up age and job info. Does that make sense? Then once you unpack it, you can do things like print it, right? You also use it. So we have a function where we filled all these things and we return name, age, and major. It goes to the next, it goes back to wherever it's returning to as a tuple, and then you can use variables again, very much the same way to unpack what you just returned. There is an asterisk operator that will unpack everything that's remaining. Like if you did part of it, but you want to get everything else, you can use the asterisk. We probably won't be using that in here, but it is there. I can't say this word very well. Immutability of tuples is very important. That's what makes sets tuples apart from lists, is that you can't change them. That you're not going to have users going in and changing them. You can't modify them. You can't add more elements to it. You can't take elements out of it. You can't directly modify the stuff in it. So you can make no mutations of your tuple once you create it. You can have objects inside of your tuple that can change. Like I said, you could have a list inside a tuple, and you can access that list directly, change the list, but you can't change which list is in the tuple. They're really effective for storing things you don't want to change. They're faster than lists in a lot of ways, and they take up less processing power because limit to what you can do to them. So if you want to compare them, the biggest one is the changeability of it. The mutability is the big difference between a list and a tuple. Syntax difference is the parentheses versus the square brackets. Performance and use cases, tuples are more memory efficient. They're ideal for fixed data, coordinates, building a deck of cards like we're going to. The cards don't change. They're the same 52 cards no matter what. Lists are more for dynamic changing things, storing database information, storing things that you know is going to be updated, then go for a list. The methods available are similar to a list, but not as many. Because you can't do any changing, you don't need as many functions or methods. So they have count and index, so it can tell you how many times something occurs in a tuple. That's what count will do. Index obviously will tell you what index position that piece of data is at in your tuple. Length will tell you the length of it. Max will tell you the maximum number or the maximum value in your tuple. Minimum will tell you the minimum value. So those are all available to you just like they are with lists and strings. Well, I don't think maximum is in the string. So be aware that they're there. You can not do things like append or remove because they're immutable. So you absolutely can combine tuples and lists. You can have a list of tuples, and you can also have a tuple full of lists. So an example that will be useful for you guys moving forward is your deck of cards will be a list in your final project. The card itself will be a tuple. The reason I know this is because it's written in the directions that way. Now, why would we want to do that? The list of cards is changeable because when you start dealing cards, you're going to take things out of the list. So you want to be able to add them, shuffle them, that sort of thing. The card itself is not mutable and not changeable, so it makes sense for it to be tuple. And it also works out to be a teaching lesson for this class. I think you'll see moving forward in your career as programmers or computing students that you'll find that you'll have tuples that are made up of lists to give the flexibility of being able to change the list inside of them, but not change who has access to what list. And then you'll also see the reverse or the opposite of that. We'll have a lot of lists that have things that you don't want the individual items changed, but you might want to add or remove items from the list.
If a tuple, can you sort it?
I don't know. That's a good question. We should look that up. When I get finished with the slides, we'll go look that up. I know you sort of list, so I'm gonna guess no because it's immutable. So the order it's in is gonna be probably fixed. That would be my guess. I'm gonna be honest with you, tuples are not in any other programming language I know. So I have to look up things about them periodically because I don't use them enough and I'm old. So any knowledge not used or accessed regularly has to be refreshed a lot. But I'm gonna guess no, but I will look it up for sure and tell you. You can't. Yeah. That I have a couple other people shaking their heads that probably are right. So this was a very short slide deck, but the fundamental things that you need to take away from tuples is that they're fixed. There's not a lot of change going on there. They're very good for static data, stuff that you want to keep the same and you don't want your users to change. You might use a tuple when you're setting up personal information for your account users because their name and social security number probably will not likely to change. The social security number should never change. But some people might change their name, but it's a slim possibility. Then you just make a new tuple for them. The operators are pretty much similar to lists. The ones that you're going to use a lot is count and index. You're going to want to know what position a piece of data is in so you can unpack it correctly. You also are a lot of times want to count if you have a really long tuple, how many times something happened or occurs in the side of it. Practice is the best way of understanding and reinforcing this. So that's why the project's going to be using them. And so is the lab on Tuesday. And honestly, having taught this and gone through this now, because this is the first semester we've included tuples, in 1300. I probably will start teaching it inside of lists because I think it will make more sense to teach it at the same time we're teaching lists. So thank you for being my guinea pig class. Questions for me before I stop this? All right. So today, absolutely